Jida, pure, mind, nation, mind, west, land of the setting Aten, the setting sun. ODWIRAMAN, the purified nation, Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, African people, black people, in the land of the setting Aten, sun, the western hemisphere. ODWIRAMAN, the purified nation, spirit genetic descendants of our ancestresses and ancestors of Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, Africa, who were forced into the western hemisphere during the Umusuo Kessie, the great perversity, the enslavement era. ODWIRAMAN, spirit genetic descendants of those Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestresses and ancestors who maintained our ancestral religion, culture, and identity as a nation, and therefore effectively waged war against the whites and their offspring, massacred the whites and their offspring with metal armaments and through chemical and biological weapons of warfare, thereby forcing the end of enslavement in North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. ODWIRAMAN, spirit genetic descendants of those Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut ancestresses and ancestors who established independent, sovereign nations, towns, cities, secure in their sovereignty in the Western Hemisphere after liberating themselves from enslavement through war. AMANNE, Nationism, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Nationism, African Black Nationism, the recognition of the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit nation, the African nation, the Black nation, as a living, breathing entity, an organic entity, of which Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Africans, Black people, are a component part, an organic entity, governed by a unique spirit, of which each Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit individual shares. Individual function, family function, clan function, ethnic function, the building blocks and governing structure of nationism, rooted in the unique energy of the region of Asase Afua, our fertile earth mother, upon which we dwell, and the blending of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral blood circles, governed by specific abosom, deities within the Oman, the nation, reflective of the divine order of creation. AMANNE, Nationism, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Nationism, the purification of nationalism, the completion of the task begun by our ancestresses and ancestors, the restoration of our spirit genetic identity, our clans, our ethnicities, our collective function as ODWIRAMAN, the purified nation of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut in the Western Hemisphere, restored upon our own sovereign territory in Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, and in the Western Hemisphere, independent, self-governing, and secure in the absolute defense of our sovereignty and the complete eradication of our enemies. Okay, so your GMO greetings, did I say everyone for tuning in for this conference presentation. First of all, Medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehempata Akan. That means my name is Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehempata Akan, Odwirafo of Akwamuman, Amaruka, Atifi, the Akwamu nation in North America, within ODWIRAMAN, the Purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere. What we typically have within ODWIRAMAN, within the Purified nation, is a yearly conference. This is our 5th annual conference. Of course, we're live streaming because of the whole shutdown and social distancing and so forth. Typically, we have an event where we have, we rent out a venue. We have vendors throughout the day, putting forward, products that are connected to our nation building efforts. We have several presenters dealing with different aspects, the 7 principal values of Ancestral nation building, that restoration that we will go over today. So we have a full day event. But of course, since we have, this situation, we just wanted to, just letting people come in. We wanted to at least give, just a basic presentation for those who have not been able to attend the conference. We have some videos and some audio of previous conferences on our ODWIRAMAN AFAHYE page. We can put the link in the chat room so you can see some of those. We also have a 7-part series that we did on Blog Talk Radio on ODWIRAMAN, the Purified Nation and so forth, and AMANNE, Nationism, the Purification of Nationalism. And we've published 3 ODWIRAMAN AFAHYE journals for the first 3 conferences. And these books you can download for free. These are 3 of our 31 books. We've published 31 books to date. We have some more books coming out this summer, but 3 of them are the ODWIRAMAN conference journals and so forth. You can download those for free, just like you can download all of our 31 books for free, and you can get some more detailed information. So we still wanted to deal with these concepts, including the pedigree of revolutionary, resolutionary nationism in the context of ODWIRAMAN, the Purified Nation. Today, of course, is Awusida Sunday. It is also the first full day of the summer solstice. So that is a significant part of the year, time of the year for us. So, so we're going to get into all of that. So this is you'll find this particular document on the ODWIRAMAN page. Pull this up. And of course, if you have any questions, or if there are any issues with the sound, just let me know in the chat room. Okay. The Zoom platform had been having issues with regard to connection in some videos and so forth, because so many people have been on Zoom because of the, shutdowns and so forth. It looks like they've corrected much of that, but if you have any issues with the sound or, video, just let me know. So the link in the chat room is where you'll find this particular document. So we're going to start off with that. So as you see, ODWIRAMAN AFAHYE, the Purified Nation, Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Africans, Black people in the Western Hemisphere. I just want to make sure somebody sent a message. All right. And we use the terminology AMANNE, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black Nationism, the Purification of Nationalism. So first we want to deal with different specific definitions. We have a number of different things going on in the country right now. On the surface, there's a lot of pseudo-revolution going on, a lot of misinformation being put forward, a lot of divergences, distractions, people pretending to promote Black lives, so-called Black Lives Matter, which is actually lesbian, dissexual, homosexual organization fronting as an organization that has something to do with our liberation, which has nothing to do with that. It's funded by the whites and their offspring to the tune of millions of dollars. George Soros, billionaire philanthropist who funds subversive movements, especially with regard to our people, has funded Black Lives Matter and so forth, as well as other white organizations that are, committed to funding our degeneration. So let's deal with reality, deal with a real approach to nation building, restoration, rooted in our ancestral religious values. So this is what ODWIRAMAN is talking about. Give me 1 second. Okay. So we need to deal with actual definitions, proper definitions. So you'll see first and foremost that ODWIRAMAN, defined in the language of ancient Kanit and Kemet. Kanit is a title of Nubia. Of course, Kemet is an ancient name of ancient Egypt and so forth, proper designation. So within our ancestral language, and this is the reason we utilize this designation, ODWIRAMAN is defined as the pure, purified, Jira, nation, mine, in the west, mine, land of the setting sun. Okay, apologize for that. So why do we use that terminology? Proper vocalizations of these terms can be found in the tree language of the Akan people of Ghana and Ivory Coast. And when we talk about Akwamuman, Amaruka, Atifi, the Akwamu nation in North America, we are an Akan organization and so forth. We know our Akan ancestry. As we're going to get into a little bit later, the Hoodoo tradition, the Hoodoo ancestral religious tradition in North America is the Akan tradition preserved in our blood circles in North America. So we utilize, of course, a lot of Akan language. However, when we're talking about this term, ODWIRAMAN, the ancient definitions are found and the vocalizations in the Akan language because, of course, the ancient people of ancient Kanit and Kemet are our ancestresses and ancestors going back 70,000+ years ago. Some of us migrated from ancient Kanit and Kemet, Nubia and Egypt after the fall of Kemet, migrated west, reestablished ourselves in the empire of Ghana or Akana and so forth a couple of thousand years ago. Then about 1,000 years later, because of Muslim invasions, some of our people migrated from the region of the empire of Ghana, Mali, Songhai and so forth, that region further south towards the forest belt and the savanna regions into the regions of where Ghana and Ivory Coast are today. And then hundreds of years after that, some of our people during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era, were taken from those regions and forced into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessie, of course, the enslavement era. And this is how we ended up in the Western Hemisphere. But what you will find is that our people, our civilization in ancient Kanit, Nubia, and some migrating up to Kemet and so forth and establishing Kemet, so-called Egypt and so forth, you'll find the language, culture, religious, ritual practices and so forth are found in the languages, cultures, and ritual practices all over Afuraitkaitnut, because that is our ancestral root. We're not just talking about dynastic or pre-dynastic Kemet about 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. We're dealing with over 70,000+ years ago. When you look archaeologically, you'll find that our people were in those regions and so forth. We migrated out. So you look at the Akan language, Yoruba language, Igbo language, Ebe language, Fon language, Bakongo, Basa, various languages across the continent, the Fang, the Ovambo, and you'll find their roots, they're directly derived and descendant genetically from our ancestral language and culture of ancient Kemet and Kanit. So this is why we can find the proper vocalizations of terms from the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, in the Akan language and various other languages. Here's an example of that. So we use the tree language of the Akan, and we talk about that trustery and so forth there. The tree language you will find, so for example, you have the term TWRA spelled with the loaf in the Medut for the T sound, but also the open hand, palm facing upward, which is the D sound. So DWR or DWRA. So how do we know how that's pronounced? Sometimes the vowels were not placed in the spellings of terms in ancient Kemet. So the proper vocalizations, Egyptologists are not aware of, but when we have the same terms with the same meaning in our ancestral languages of today, then we have the proper vocalizations and the proper meanings. So in ancient Kemet, you'll see Jira means to be clean, to cleanse, to purify, to celebrate a ceremony of purification. So that's what Jira means. And you look at the term mine or manu, means a city, place, region, or nation. As you can see here, a town or city. The term mine or manu also defines the west, the land of the setting, Aten, the land of the setting sun, in the language of Kanit and Kemet. Let me move this over here. All right. So we also find, however, that the term tree, in the tree language of the Akan, the term Omine, or mine means a city, town, nation, a government, a people. And the related term, Omine None, means a country abroad. So let's look at that definition a little bit further down in the document. And the link in the chat room is where you can find this document that we're looking at right now. So as we can see in the Medut, you have, and we showed this a little bit just above, mine or minu. Hold on 1 second. Just want to make sure everybody's just had a message. Okay. Okay, so mine, minu, a town or a city. Mine, minu, land of the setting sun, the west. When you look in the Akan language, mine or omine means a town, a collection of houses, houses larger than a village, the body of inhabitants of a country. So that's a town, also used for nation and so forth. And then you have Amai None, a foreign country, a country abroad. So that's important. So Jira, and then we, just so we can pull that out. In fact, let's make a quick switch real quick to this particular document just to give you some further definition. This is one of our articles. This particular article is called Akan Vocalizations of Our Ancestral Language of Kemet. So once again, we're talking about how just proof of our people in Ghana, Ivory Coast, and some of our people forced over here into the Western Hemisphere, practicing the Hoodoo tradition, still using Akan terms, Akan language, Akan ritual practices, and so forth. But when you want to show some proof beyond just a couple of terms, for example, if you said, well, mama means mother in one language, and you can look around the world and mama means the same thing, that's one thing. But we have thousands of words that you find in the Medutu, the hieroglyphic dictionary, that you find in the Akan language because they're the exact same term. So to give proof of that, this is just a short article that we published. You look in the Medutu, the term kes. This is a symbol for the K sound. This horizontal boat symbol is for the S sound, and it's double, so KS, kes. The Egyptologist wasn't sure of the vocalization, so they placed an E. That's a convention in Egyptology to in between consonants to facilitate pronunciation if they're not sure. It means to chatter foolishly, to jest. In the Coptic dialect, the late Kemet dialect, the late Egyptian dialect that came into usage about 2,000 years ago near the end of the empire, you'll see that kes, which is pronounced K-A-C, K-E-C, kaskes. So instead of kes, it's kaskes. So to chatter foolishly, to jest. Now, when we look in the Akan language, and this is from the Akan Asante Fanti dictionary, we see the term kasa kasa, to talk much, to talk noisily, to chatter. So this is not kes kes, and Akan is kasa kasa, to chatter foolishly in ancient Kemet. Thousands of years later in the language of the Akan, kasa kasa, to chatter, to talk much, to talk noisily. In ancient Kemet, you have the term him him and him himat, to cry, to roar, bellow, battle cry, and there's a crown in ancient Kemet, which is the him him crown. It's the war cry crown. It means to be loud, war cry, roaring, bellowing, and so forth. Again, they put the E in between the consonants because they didn't know what the vocalization was. As you can see in Coptic, they have the H symbol and the M, so it's HMHM. But they say him him. In Akan is hama hama, boisterous. An example, epo ye hama hama, the sea, epo is boisterous, the sea rages. Raging, boisterous, something that's raging or loud and boisterous. When you see the waves crashing against the rocks and so forth, it's loud and raging. That's boisterous, loud, raging, the roaring and so forth. Him in ancient Kemet, hama hama in Akan is the same term. In Kemet, you have the term kai, with the basket symbol and the eagle, and then the two strokes, which is the E sound, I or E sound. You also have the basket and the eagle, which is just K and A, the ka, so it's kai or ka, to think out, to devise, to meditate, to speak, to repeat, to say, to call out, to tell out. In Akan, ka, to emit a sound, to utter, speak, say, to tell. So both, of course, are the same term. You have sha or shay, to fix, to appoint, to determine, to destine, to predestinate in ancient Kemet. In Akan, the H-Y combination is the sh sound, so this term is she, she. It means to fix, to set up, to institute. It also means to set, constitute, to appoint, to predestine, to predestinate, to appoint, to ordain beforehand. And then you have to predestine, to predestinate, to destine, to ordain, to fix, to appoint. She becomes she in Akan. So as you can see, every one of these terms are specific. You have Ari, which is the term for eye in ancient Kemet, the symbol of the eye and so forth. You also have the version An, which is the symbol of the eye again, so the eye, but also meaning to look, to glance, to eye something, to glance as a verb, but also as a noun, the eye itself. Then you have An, which means to turn a glance towards something. So that's Ari. The R is a rolling R, so not Ari, but Ari. And then you have An or Ani, meaning an eye. In Akan language, Ani or Eni means the eye, the eyes, and also a look. You have in ancient Kemet, Ban, or Ban, meaning to be evil, to be wicked. In the Coptic dialect, you see Ban. In Akan, from the Asante Fanti dictionary, Bani, bad, evil, wicked. In ancient Kemet, you have Ma, meaning to grant, to give, and you see the hand with the open palm, as well as the forearm with the hand open palm and giving a loaf of bread, a little cone of bread and so forth. To grant, to give. In Akan, Ma means to give, to hand, to communicate, to grant, and so forth, to impart. So this is simply a sample of a number of different words. We have thousands of words in the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet. All of the root words you find in the Akan language, you will find them in the language of ancient Kemet with the same meaning. So we're speaking the same language. We never stop speaking the same language. Now, of course, that's true linguistically, but also genetically. When you look at the Y chromosomal DNA, as well as the mitochondria, you'll see we have, when they've done DNA tests, studies on mummies in ancient Kemet and so forth, you'll find that that same, for example, the Y chromosomal haplogroup, the E1B1A haplogroup found with Ramnesu III and so forth, you'll find that same Y chromosomal haplogroup in 80+% and even higher in the western part of the continent, as well as central and south, and 50 to 75% of all Black people in America. So we have a genetic migratory pattern that leaves ancient Khanid and Kemet in clusters in West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut Africa, and moves into the Western Hemisphere. It's the same with regard to artifacts and archaeology. It's the same with regard to the migrations of people. It's the same with regard to the migration of the language. It's the same migratory pattern genetically, linguistically, and anthropologically. And the final one, of course, is Jida, which we just talked about, to cleanse, to pure, purify, purification, to celebrate a ceremony of purification. And then in the Santi Fanti dictionary, Jida, meaning to cleanse from guilt and so forth, it's ritual cleansing. But then you also have Ojira, the yam custom, an annual festival celebrated in the month of August or September, when the first yam is eaten, being considered also the the beginning of a new year. We celebrate our new year for 7 days in September. That is our Ojira celebration. It means purification. It is the end of the warm cycle, the beginning of the new, cool cycle, the end of the summer. We celebrate leading up to the autumn equinox. That is the end of the warm cycle, the end of one cycle, and the beginning of the seeding cycle is the harvesting cycle, but the seeding cycle. End of the warm cycle, the beginning of the conception cycle, and so forth. So we say the ends of the year have met and so forth. Ojira means ritual purification. So in ancient Kemet, when it says purification, Jida, but also means to celebrate a ceremony of purification, we still celebrate that ceremony of Jida or purification. It is our New Year celebration. We also engage the purificatory process when we cleanse our head with ritual plant life and so forth. That is the Ojira plant and so forth. So we have that ritual of purification by the same name. So we use that, we touch on that just to give some greater context, that when we're talking about these terms and so forth, these are not just arbitrary terms. So when we designate our people as ODWIRAMAN, the purified nation, this is what we're dealing with. So we said Jida means purification, mind, town or city, mind, land of the setting sun, the west. It means that in ancient Khanid and Kemet, it means the same thing in Akwamu. And when it says the land of the west, well, first and foremost, Oman means a nation, a polity, a group of people, a government. But then mine also means west, land of the setting sun in ancient Kemet. And mine also meaning a country abroad in the Tree language, the Akan language. We are in the extreme west of Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut of Africa. So we are Oman, we're a nation, Oman, that's in the west, Oman. And we are the Ojira purified Oman nation. So we say ODWIRAMAN is our designation for Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut Africans, Black people, who are descendants genetically and spiritually forced into the Western Hemisphere of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut Africans, Black people, forced into the Western Hemisphere as a result of the Umusuo Kessie, the great perversity, the enslavement era. Our Akua Akutu, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, purified themselves through adherence to Nanasom, ancestral religion, and Amamre, ancestral culture. We were thus able to free ourselves from enslavement. They waged war incessantly against the whites and their offspring, our absolute enemies, and forced the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere, including North, Central, South Amaruka, America, and the Caribbean. So, make sure we have this. So when we say here that ODWIRAMAN, the purified nation in the West, is a unique collective of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut Africans within the larger community of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people worldwide, we're talking about our spirigenetic inheritance. So when we're forced into the Western Hemisphere, second, I have some people coming in. So when we're forced into the Western Hemisphere, at some point when we escape, we engage our ancestral religious practices, we make proper decisions, we attune to the forces of nature, we attune to our ancestresses and ancestors and find out the best means by which to wage war against the whites and their offspring, kill them, burn down plantations, free ourselves, escape, move into independent areas, and establish independent sovereign settlements, maroon settlements, nations, away from the enslavement region and so forth. And we defend those sovereign entities with a militia. This is what we've done. We did that for hundreds of years, which we're going to get into. But when we're naturally drawn by our ancestresses and ancestors, as well as the abosom, the orisha, the vodou, the deities, the spirit forces in creation, we're naturally inclined, pushed to move to a certain region of the Earth Mother. In this region of the Earth Mother in the Western Hemisphere, we're still, of course, this is called America, but in reality, we're on this region of the Earth Mother's body. So different aspects of the Earth Mother's body, there's different energy complexes that manifest. So when we're naturally drawn to a certain region of the Earth Mother's body, we escape from a plantation, go to a certain region, and we're drawn to settle in that specific region. The energy in that region is auspicious for us to settle and establish an independent sovereign nation. Then we move to that region, then we're drawn to blend ancestral blood circles. So Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people, African Black people who are Kan or Yoruba or Basa or Fula or Fang or Ovambo or Igbo or Zulu or whatever group they come from, we're drawn to blend ancestral blood circles in this specific region of the Earth Mother and so forth. We begin to take on the plant life and animal life and mineral life with regard to food as well as medicine and incorporate that into our bodies. Some of the plant life and animal life that exists in the Western Hemisphere, in the regions that we migrated to, did not exist on the continent and so forth. So we take these foods into our system that transforms our cells to a certain extent. We take in medicines that are procured from this plant life, animal life, and mineral life and take that into our bodies and so forth. We align with the forces in nature as they manifest in a unique fashion in this region of the Earth Mother's body. So when spirit possession occurs, we escape from a plantation, set up an independent settlement near a specific river, and the spiritual force that animates that river possesses one of the individuals who's a priest or a priestess and so forth, and operates through the body of the individual and heals people, shows us how to utilize medicine through spirit possession. An ancestor and ancestress gets into the body of an individual and goes to a specific plant or mineral and so forth and shows us how to procure that plant and make medicine out of that plant that we've never seen before. We communicate with the spirit of plant life, the spirits of plant life and mineral life and animal life to learn their usages with regard to bringing balance to us physically and so forth. We are indigenizing ourselves to the land. The only way you can indigenize yourself to a landmass is to be possessed by and communicate with the divinities as they manifest in this specific region. This is why the whites and their offspring, whether it's white Europeans or white Hindus, white Asians, white Arabs, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Hispanics and so forth, cannot be indigenous anywhere. They do not have the capacity to be possessed by or communicate with the forces in nature, so they cannot indigenize themselves to any landmass. They simply invade landmasses and dwell there. But we deal with the forces in nature that animate the landmass, as well as Asaseyafua and Asaseya themselves, the fertile and barren Earth Mother, twin Earth Mother divinities. So we have the capacity to do that. When we take in the plant life, animal life, and mineral life for food as well as medicine, and also become possessed spiritually by the forces in nature that animate this landmass, that energy changes physically, what we take inside our system, and spiritually, the energy that is infused within us, it transforms our cells. It energizes our cells in a slightly different fashion. And then that includes the sperm and ovum cells. So when we have children, then those children are the firstborn whose bodies physically and spiritually are resonating at the frequency of this particular landmass, because we took that energy in through food and medicine, as well as through spirit possession, the forces in nature that animate the land. So they become the firstborn that are indigenized to the land. But they come through a blended blood circles of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. So now we have a unique collective of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people, who have migrated to a certain region of the Earth Mother in the West, blended ancestral blood circles, aligned with the Asase Afua and Asasia, the fertile and Earth Mother, barren Earth Mother divinities in this region, aligned with the plant life, animal life, and mineral life in this region, and those spiritual implications, we forged a unique identity, a unique form of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit expression that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth. So we are in the West Oman, we're a unique collective, a nation Oman, and we're a purified nation. ODWIRAMAN, the purified nation. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. Now, just to give one further example or a further definition, this is one of our 31 books, Afuraka, Afuraikai, the origin of the term Africa, because we have to give proper definitions for people who are unaware. And we wrote the book to show, of course, that the term Africa does not come from a Roman general and so forth. That's foolishness. People who repeat that misinformation are just simply showing that they are misinformed. Doesn't matter if they're a scholar, so-called scholar, or a speaker. Anybody repeating that idiocy is misinformed. So we show that when the whites and their offspring try to define the term Africa through terms from the Arab language or ancient Phoenician or Greek or Latin and so forth, or Sanskrit, we show that every one of those terms are not the origin of the term Africa, and we show it comes directly from Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut in ancient Kemet. So we don't have to go through the entire piece, but the term Ka means soul, but Ka means raised land as well. And just to go all the way down to the appendix. In the papyrus of Hunefer, as well as the papyrus of Ani, when the Ra is talking about the creation of the world, and he's talking about dwelling on the first landmass that rose up from primordial waters at the beginning of creation. Here you'll find Afuraitkai, that's the primordial mound and so forth, that's spoken about. But the term Ka, as well as Kai, the land high above the surface of the Nile River, in Coptic, that is Kai, and so forth. Even though the Egyptologist spells it with a Q, but as you can see in the Coptic dialect, it's the K sound. The high place upon which the God of creation stood, and so forth. Ka, meaning high land, Nile banks above the river, high. So Ka means land, high above the river, high land, mountain, and so forth. Ka, also Kaka, we find in the Akan language. Kaka means hill or highland and so forth. And then, just so you can see this imagery. So when we talk about the creation of the world and the cosmology of ancient Kemet, talking about the entire world was covered by water. Volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor caused a portion of the ocean floor to surge upward to break through the surface of the water. That is the high land, or the land that's raised up and so forth. And this is why the term Ka not only shows the man with the two arms raising up and so forth, but it's also a term for the highland that rose up at the beginning of creation. And so we go through some the etymological roots of that, but there's certain things, a couple of things we just wanted to show. So when you see the creator of the universe, Ra, moving through, operating through the sun and so forth, the sun is called Aten. Ra is the creator and Ra'et is the creatress. So we have the creator and creatress moving through this, utilizing the sun to transmit their energy. When Ra moves through the underworld, he takes the form of a flat-horned ram, and he's called Afura. Afura. And when Afura, the energy moving in the underworld, moves through the primordial landmass and causes that landmass to break through the surface of the water, that is called the Ka of Afura, Afuraka, the land Ka of Afura, the land of the creator, and the land Ka'et of Afurait, the land of the creatress. So we're not going to go through that entire piece, but just so you are aware, so you can see these images. This is Ra'et, the creatress of the universe. And of course, we already showed Ra, and this is a form of Ra'et, as Afraet, Afri, and so forth. She's shown as a goddess on a coin, the goddess Africa or Dea Africa, and so forth. That is Afri or Afraet, and so forth. So when we're showing that the whole book is talking about Afuraka, Afuraitkai, the origin of the term Africa. The Ka of Afura is the land of Afura, the land of the creator. The Ka'et, the feminine term for highland, the Ka'et of Afurait is the land of the creatress. So Afuraka, Afuraikai is the land of the creator and creatress. And we are born of that land. Now, and again, in the chat room, if you have any issues with the sound or the imagery, just let me know. Now, we talked about, so ODWIRAMAN is the purified, Ujira, Oman, nation, mind, west, land of the setting sun. This is our designation for our people. When we talk about, yes, Oman, a nation, a collection of people, a body politic and so forth, a nation, and mind, land of the west setting sun, we're in the extreme west. When we talk about the Ojira portion, we're talking about people who escaped from enslavement, established an independent settlement. In order to do that properly, we align with the forces in nature that govern us, to make those proper decisions, to live in harmony with divine order, learning from the divinities that govern all of creation, what's the best means by which to wage war against our enemy, reestablish ourselves, purify ourselves so we can establish an independent, sovereign nation rooted in divine order. That's the purificatory piece, communicating with the forces of nature as they manifest in a unique expression in the Western Hemisphere. That's purification. Dealing with the plant life, animal life, mineral life, and the spirits of plant life, animal life, and mineral life. That is a purificatory process. So we're the purified nation. This is our designation for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere, ODWIRAMAN. So this is why we say here, we have the capacity and responsibility today to complete the process of nation building restoration begun by our Akutu, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, the attainment of our complete independence as a self-governing nation on our own territory, and securing the absolute defense of our sovereignty. We have the capacity and responsibility to be independent, sovereign, and secure in our sovereignty on our own territory. That's what nation building really is. We say this capacity is founded upon our realigning ourselves, purifying ourselves through adherence to our Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion and culture. It is in our souls and blood. This is our transcarnational inheritance as Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Africans, Black people in the West, the purified nation. Now, and here we're showing Nana Kwame Afrani, which is George Washington Carver, representing that kind of Afurakani individual who would communicate with the spirits of plant life and mineral life, as he would say. And then once he would communicate with them every morning when he would go out around dawn and so forth, communicate with the spirits of plant life, then he would go back into the laboratory and replicate what he learned from the spirits of plant life and mineral life and transform the world with hundreds of innovative products, from whether it was peanuts, soybeans, sweet potatoes, and everything else, transforming agriculture around the world because of his adherence to his ancestral religious practice, which directed him to communicate with the spirits of plant life and mineral life for that purpose. Nana Abena Araminta Harriet Tubman, she is one of our Akan ancestresses, who was a liberator and so forth. People know about the Underground Railroad. Many people are unaware of the fact that she led the Combahee River Raid in South Carolina and so forth, where she was the first female to lead a regiment of the Union Army during the war and so forth, took them into a region of South Carolina and freed over 700 people who were enslaved. It was an armed regiment. She was the military leader. She knew the ins and outs and so forth of the region, led an armed regiment to free 700 of our people at one time. So when she talks about escaping from enslavement, talking about falling into a trance possession, spirit possession, Akwamu. People would say, well, she had an epileptic fit. She was going through Akwamu, which is the Akan term for spirit possession, communicating with the Nsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors, and the Abosom, the divinities. When she came out of possession, she knew which direction to go to guide the people away from the enemy and make sure that they got to the free territory without losing anybody along the way. So that's ancestral religious practice guiding our way to freedom and so forth. One of the reasons we use them. So we talk, and these are the Mara Mountains in Sudan and Kanit, Nubia and so forth. And of course that we did a broadcast on soil to soul, ancestral religion in the blood and so forth. This is what we were talking about. Now, we always use this example of when we look at the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father, who are called AMANNE and AMANNE in ancient Kanit and Kemet, Inyamewa and Inyame and Akan, and various other terms in various languages and so forth. Hold on one second, I want to make sure we okay. The Great Mother and Great Father, Supreme Being, AMANNE and AMANNE. Within the great divine body are organs. Just like your body is the great body, your body gives birth to children, which are smaller bodies, which are your organs and glands and so forth, and they regulate order within your body. And your organs and glands give birth to children themselves, which are smaller bodies, which are organelles or cells, and they are children of the organs, and they serve their parents, the organs, and when they serve their parents, the organs, they're serving you, the great being, at the same time. So the Great Mother and Father, Supreme Being is AMANNE and AMANNE, called Inyamewa and Inyame and Akan, and Mawu and Lisa and Vodun, and Olokun and Olorun and Yoruba and so forth. That is the great divine body of creation. The organs within the great divine body, the children of the Great Mother and Great Father, Supreme Being, are the deities, the Orisha, the Abosom, the Nsoru to the divinities. And then the cells, their children, are plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black human life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black human life only. We are the cells within the organs. When we as cells serve our parent organs, the parent divinities that govern us, then we serve the Supreme Being at the same time. So this is what we're talking about here when we say we operate within a world body and so forth. ODWIRAMAN, the purified nation of Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Africans in the West. We are a manifestation of a collective. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people are a world, collective body. We are a unique expression within that world body of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, African Black people. Now, so we're just going through that process and so forth, describing those things in this portion of the document. Now, we talked about Afashe. Afashe means a festival or, instituting a certain kind of cultural observance and so forth. This is why it's called ODWIRAMAN Afahye, or the ODWIRAMAN Festival or ODWIRAMAN Conference and so forth. This is why we utilize that terminology. But the focus of our conference, the identity of who we are, first and foremost, is ODWIRAMAN, but then how do we function as the purified nation? How do we move forward? How do we solve our problems? first and foremost, when you have an issue, you look to see if anyone else had the issue before and how did they solve it effectively. We don't seek individuals out who had similar problems. They put forth solutions that did not work, and then we seek to embrace those unworkable, failed solutions. So when we talk about nation building, our people and what we need to do, there have been various approaches to solving these issues, but we take a different approach. When we talk about nationism, and this is what our conference is about, nationism, AMANNE, the purification of nationalism. So what are we talking about when we say nationism, the purification of nationalism? We say we, through ancestrally inherited wisdom and guidance, properly reestablish and restore our Oma and our nation, firmly grounded and rooted in our spirit genetic identity, our transcarnational identity. That means through successive reincarnations, rebirth through our ancestral clans, our ancestresses and ancestors return through our clans. And we have a transcarnational identity. You, when you were born, before you came into your mother's womb, you were an ancestor or ancestress who lived at some point before. You came back through your ancestral clan to return to the world, to bring that experience back into the world. You may have lived on a plantation and waged war against the whites and offspring that was killed in that war 200 years ago. Your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren have, continued to, reproduce and so forth. As an ancestor or ancestress, you were watching them from the ancestral realm. A couple of hundred years later, it was time for you to return, so you were drawn back into your descendant's womb and born into the world once again. We are ancestresses and ancestors return. We have a transcarnational, meaning through transcarnational incarnations, we have a transcarnational identity. You're the same ancestress from 200 years ago that is returned through the womb. You're the same ancestor from 200 years ago that is returned through the womb. Because of the blood mixture and war and so forth within the blood circles over the past couple of hundred years, there's some physical blood mixture. There may have been rape a couple of hundred years ago that polluted the blood mixture and so forth, that lightened the skin of people and so forth. But when it's time for you to return, you're the same ancestor, you're the same ancestress who's come back through that womb. You may come back in a little bit lighter brown body, but you're that same Afurakani warrior, African warrior, the Afuraitkaitnit warrioress, African warrioress who waged war against the whites and offspring. Now you're back in this body once again to wage war against our enemies once again and reestablish our nation. So that's a transcarnational identity. We don't lose our identity. As we say, you can mix blood, but you cannot mix the soul. This is what we talk about. So we talk about the ritual practice. We embrace who we are individually as cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. We learn through this process what our specific function in creation is, how that function is a critical component of the function of our greater ancestral clans. Our ancestral clan function is a critical component of the function of our individual Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ethnic group, and how that ethnic group function is a critical component of the function of the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit African world body or community. So just like your cell, say the liver cell, comes into being and is designed to support liver functions. So it supports its parent organ, the liver. And when it supports its parent organ, it's supporting the whole body, it's playing its role. The pancreas cell serves as parent organ, the pancreas, its parent deity. When it serves as parent organ or parent divinity, it serves the great divine body at the same time. Every organ and gland and body system, the cells that comprise those systems and glands and so forth, there's a hierarchy. We serve the parent organ or system, we're serving the whole body. We as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people are cells within the great divine body. We have a specific function to execute in creation. And when we execute that function harmoniously, then we bring balance to our collective, to our community. When the cells of the pancreas execute their function harmoniously, they bring balance to the collective within the pancreas. If they go in a different direction, then they become cancerous and they bring disorder and balance within that organ, within that gland, and of course within the body as a whole, unless their development is arrested. So we must know who we are as cells, what our function is, execute that function. When we make mistakes, we have a ritual process to realign ourselves ritually so we can get back in harmony with order. Now, just to give a further example of that, so in the Akan tradition, and just so you can have a better understanding, so the Akradim Bosom in the Akan tradition are the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. So every 7 days there's a cycle, of course, but this goes back thousands of years. In our book on the Akradim Bosom, we showed that the 7-day week did not originate in the Akkadian Empire, ancient Sumer, Babylon, and so forth. It originated in Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, Africa, and was taken into those regions and so forth. So this is why the Akan people have a 7-day week. When you see people like myself named Kwesi, or somebody named Afua, or Kwame, or Ama, or Kofi, or Kwabena, Kojo, or Ajua, or Ama, and so forth, and they say, well, it's based on the day of the week that we're born. It's based on the divinity that governs the solar, lunar, or planetary body that animates that day of the week. So if you're born on Fida, or Friday, under the planet Afi and the spiritual force Afi, or Het Heru, that governs that planet, then you're Afia or Afua because you carry her energy into the world. The same thing with the other divinities. We show that the same deities that we find in ancient Kemet are found in the Akan language with the exact same names. But what's also important is that each one of these divinities that govern the 7-day week, and that 7-day week cycle governs all natural cycles on Earth, all natural cycles in creation. They also govern, these male and female divinities also govern the 11 major body systems, the endocrine system, for those who are born on Sunday, Awusi, and so forth, the reproductive system governed by Ajwa, who is all set, the immune system, which is governed by Benna or Herubedeti, the lymphatic system is governed by Sekhmet, who's called Abena, the renal system, the kidneys, the ureters, and bladder, and so forth, governed by Nebuchadnezzar, who's Akua in Akan. The nervous system is governed by Awuku, which is Set in ancient Kemet. The cardiovascular system is governed by Yao, who is called Heru in ancient Kemet. The digestive system governed by Wachet, as she's called in ancient Kemet, she's called Ya in Akan. The respiratory system is governed by Abba, she's called Nekabet in Kemet. The exocrine system governed by Het Heru, she's called Het Heru in ancient Kemet, she's called Afi in Akan or Afua. And the skeletal system governed by Amenmen, he's called Amenmen in Kemet, he's called Amenmen in Akan. And these same divinities you will find across cultures in Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, amongst Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people. They have their own names in the Yoruba tradition as Orisha. They have their own names in the Ebe tradition as Vodou, and so forth. So all cultures, of course, the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, the sun, moon, and the various planets that operate in a cyclical fashion, their energy impacts, our planet and all natural cycles on our planet. They also impact us, and of course, we're all connected to these forces of nature. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut are African Black people only. So when you look at these different 11 major body systems, and you're a child of one of these divinities, when you look at this schematic, and no matter what Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, or African Black culture we're talking about, the different deities that govern the person's head is also connected to a specific function in creation, specific biological shrine in their body, and so forth. So it's true across the board, no matter what culture, whether it's the Congo, Yoruba, whatever it is, it's the same kind of breakdown. So in the Akan tradition, we're talking about someone, for example, who's born on Benada or a Tuesday, and they're a male. They're governed by the divinity Benna, the fiery divinity Benna, who operates the planet Benna, so-called Mars, the red planet, the planet of war, fire, and so forth, hot metal, and so forth. He governs the immune system A female born on Benada is called Abena. That is Sekhmet, the divinity Sekhmet. She governs the lymphatic system. So these male and female, two deities, govern the immune and lymphatic system. They're the warrior, warrioress, and so forth. Inside the body, the immune system and lymphatic system is the warrior and warrioress, destroying cancer cells, killing cancer cells and other viral agents to preserve the integrity of the body. So if you're born under that divinity governs your head, then you have that natural inclination to bring that kind of immune and lymphatic function into the communal body, just like they bring that immune and lymphatic function to the physical body. And they bring it to the world itself, the creation itself. But you have a natural inclination because you carry that energy complex and that consciousness. So people who are children, for example, of Bena, and they're called Kwabena, males called Kwabena and so forth, they have that natural inclination because they're born under this divinity. He governs war, fire, hot metal, and so forth. So those individuals are naturally inclined towards those kinds of functions. Warrior functions, policing functions, military functions, dealing with hot metal and so forth. So that includes metallurgy. So people are naturally inclined towards engineering and working metals and so forth. He's the divinity of hot metal and so forth. Also utilizing the metal. Some people on the contractive side are dealing with metallurgy, but on the expansive side, utilizing the metal. Utilizing the metal is, waging war, attack, defense. But also, for example, people who are surgeons, they're using metal, a metal implement, to excise the tumor, to cut into the body, pull the tumor out, destroy the disorder, to preserve the integrity of the body. So whether they're a surgeon or a metallurgist or dealing with the military or martial arts and so forth, they have that kind of function. You can have someone who's born under the governance of Aakhuamuman, a female born on a Wednesday and so forth. Aakhuamuman is Nebuchadnezzar. The renal system in the body is the fluid balancing system. The kidneys and ureters and bladder and so forth is the fluid balancing system, but also the mineral balancing system, the electrolyte balance, the mineral balance and so forth. So that's a healing function, a priestess function, rebalancing function and so forth. So people are naturally inclined towards healing, naturally inclined towards herbs and medicine to heal our people and so forth. Depending on the divinity that governs you, there's a natural inclination towards certain occupations. And those certain occupations or endeavors are part and parcel of the communal body. So when you align with your divine function, when you engage in ancestral religion, it's not just about praying and, making yourself feel less stressed. The divinity that governs your head manifests through your behavior, through even your phenotype, your body type. It also manifests in your inclinations towards certain activities. And when you align with that divinity, then you engage in those activities, and that is your contribution to the Oman, to the nation. Ancestral religion leads you directly into nation building activities and so forth. And just like every one of these 11 major body systems, endocrine, reproductive, immune, lymphatic, renal, nervous, cardiovascular, digestive, respiratory, exocrine, skeletal, all work together to maintain the whole body. The activities of different Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people within the communal body are naturally inclination towards policing functions or healing functions or institution building functions or engineering functions or ritual functions and so forth. All of them combine to make up every aspect of the nation that we need. So let's go back to this. Okay, there's one question real quick. Okay, there was a question about the calendar. So the whites and their offspring learned about the 7-day week from Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. When you look about and you talk about Hellenized time and so forth, The Greeks and the Romans, even the Romans had an 8-day week, an 8-day market week before they came in contact with our people and switched it over to a 7-day week. This 7-day week that we're talking about with the different divinities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, that also has a chronobiological basis. Every 7 days, there's a chronobiological shift within your body that's in alignment with the 7-day week and so forth. The same deities that you find in the Akan language and culture are the very same deities with the same names that you find in Akan when you look at the tablets of ancient Sumer 4,000 or 6,000 years ago. You'll find that they're the same names in ancient Sumer that you find in Akan language. And then when you look in the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet, the exact same deities with the exact same names that you find as the deities govern the 7-day week in Akan, you find them in the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet. Before the Whites and Offspring existed on Earth, these are the exact same deities. So those deities we just showed on the screen, in our book, Akradin Bosun, volumes 1 and volume 2 and so forth, we show that they're the same deities with the same names, the same functions, governing the same solar, lunar, and planetary bodies in Akan culture that they find in ancient Khanid and Kemet. Now, there was a 10-day week in ancient Kemet, and then you'll have, in a certain aspect of ancient Kemet, you have a 10-day week, 36 decans and so forth, 360 days plus the 5 intercalary days and so forth. That was one of the cycles. And that had to do with specifically along the Hapi and Merit River because of the unique structure of that, of the nation, because it didn't hardly rain in Kemet. So they were dependent on the flood of the river and so forth. So there was a 10-day week. It had to do with the, 36 decans and so forth. That was that civil calendar. There was also the calendar dealing with Sapate, but there wasn't a 9-day calendar. It was a 10-day week. And you can look at those, look through that, and you'll find that information. All right. I will post a couple of links about that. So we went through that information just to show that just like every cell in the body is connected to an organ or organ system, then, it has a role in the body. Each one of us is Afurakani people, are cells within the greater divine body of the Supreme Being, within certain organs and so forth. We have a role with regard to functioning within this communal body. So that's where our nationism comes from. It's rooted in our ancestral religious cosmology and reality. So when we're talking about what we need to do as a people, what do the people who are children of Benan, Abenan need to do? What do the people who are children of Fi and Afi and so forth need to do? What the children of Awusi and Adwa need to do? How do they contribute to this nation building process? When everybody's contributing according to their nature, then all bases are covered. If we're just reacting to what the whites and their offspring do, and then we try to utilize Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Hebrewism or some pseudo-esotericism or Hinduism or some nonsense like that, or some pseudo-cosmology like that as a foundation for revolution, we're always going to miss the mark, which we always have. We are no closer to independence and sovereignty today than we were 100 years ago. Black people are no closer, even mentally, to establishing an independent, sovereign nation with our own rules, self-rule, and security within that sovereignty. We're no closer to that today than we were 100 years ago. So clearly, whatever people have been doing has been ineffective. So when you look at what's effective and what will be effective, you don't look at people who've had failed strategies for 100 years. You look at people who actually solve the problem. Those who adhere to ancestral religious practices are the ones who wage war against the whites and offspring, force the end of enslavement, escape from plantations, set up independent sovereign nations, maroon settlements, and so forth, and were living independent. For example, Dismal Swamp, as we always say in northern, in Virginia and Carolina and so forth, over 2,000 people living in that region during the enslavement era, but they escaped into the Dismal Swamp, establishing an independent nation and so forth. They had a militia. They're living generations generation after generation independently, their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren living independently on their own sovereign territory, while there are other people who are enslaved. Some of their children and grandchildren never saw a white individual because they're living independently. And when whites tried to invade, they had a militia that repelled the whites from the Dismal Swamp, to the extent that whites started trying to trade with them because they recognized them as an independent entity and they couldn't drag them back into enslavement. And that is not the only example. So we have that example, that model of being rooted in ancestral religious practice first and foremost, and then making our decisions and our, nation building structure rooted in that reality. Now, this is why we say a secular nationalism rooted in white political dogma and social doctrines, inclusive of the various strains and iterations of socialism. White socialism and blackface has never and will never lead us to this critical realization. Amorphous nationalism, inclusive of a rudderless Pan-African nationalism without an anchor in our unique spirit-genetic identity, our transcarnational identity, our very purpose for living and functioning, has never and will never lead us to achieving our goals. Messianic nationalism, rooted in the pseudo-religions and pseudo-spiritualities of the whites and their offspring, and blackened up versions of these pseudo-religious and pseudo-spiritual perversions vested in a pseudo-prophetic leader or a series of leaders, has never and will never lead us to achieving our goals. Our acquired nationalism has been a pathetic imitation of the nationalism of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring. So what we've been doing is imitating different quote-unquote white movements and trying to apply white movements to our people, instead of looking to our own people who are actually successful. If you're enslaved, success is freeing yourself from enslavement and establishing an independent nation that you can defend. Our people freed themselves from enslavement and established independent settlements in their lifetime. Then those people would go back to plantations, raid them, set them on fire, free more people, bring them back to the settlement. Those are the same people who wage war against the United States government. The United States government waged war against them, the Gullah Wars, misnomered the Seminole Wars and so forth, where the United States was trying to drag our people back into enslavement because we were independent. They never drove the Gullah back to enslavement and so forth. So the Gullah Wars ended up forcing the Civil War to come into being because we were waging war against the United States Army. And then eventually, many of our people joined that Civil War effort to end enslavement. So you had all these different impactful forces, us escaping from enslavement, burning down plantations, getting other independent settlements, establishing independent communities, going against, the quote-unquote slaveholders and so forth. The United States government sending the army at first under Andrew Jackson, who was a general at the time, down to quell the quote-unquote rebellion amongst the Gullah, misnomer the Seminoles and so forth, but the Gullah and so forth. And year after year after year being defeated and so forth by the Gullah armies and so forth, it forced the Civil War to come into being. Even after the Civil War, people just talked about Juneteenth and so forth. After the Civil War, we had more of our people establishing independent Black towns. There was an independent Black town movement. The same people during enslavement who would free themselves from enslavement and establish independent settlements. Same thing happened on Edisto Island, for example, in South Carolina, established independent settlements even before the Civil War, independent maroon settlements, people living free and so forth, escaping from enslavement and defending their settlements with a militia. After the Civil War, those who had that same mindset were grounded in ancestral religious practice, aligning their thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order, being guided by their ancestresses and ancestors, established independent towns. There was an independent town movement. There were hundreds of independent Black towns all over the United States. Now, there were some people who were seeking to integrate with the whites and their offspring and seeking to embrace the whites and their offspring and trying to live with them and gain some rights, some political rights, and trying to vote and all of this nonsense. And you had other people establishing independent Black towns. There are some of them that still exist. Many of them don't exist any longer. You have Mound Bayou, Mississippi, for example, independent Black town. You have North Brentwood, Maryland. It's been around for nearly 100 years, independent Black town. You have a number of independent Black towns that still exist from, back after the post-Civil War era. So you have Black people engaged in nation-building activities. Now, so we have a model of people who are actually successful. If you can free yourself from enslavement and establish an independent sovereign nation in the midst of the enslavement era, that's success. If they could do that in the past and we're directly descendant from them and incarnate of them, we have the capacity to establish an independent sovereign nation securing our sovereignty today. That's the pathway, grounded in ancestral religious practice with a proper view of creation in the world, what's in harmony with order, as well as our enemies who are out of harmony with order, the whites in our spring, and their culture and pseudo-religions. When you don't embrace that foolishness, embrace reality, our people and our people only, without exception. You do not embrace the whites in our spring. That means white Europeans, Arabs, Hindus, white Hispanics, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Asians. Non-Black people are the cancerous cells within the great divine body. Just like cancer cells develop within your body, but your immune system destroys them and expels them so your body can continue. The disfigured, destructive, cancerous cells that have developed within the worldwide Black body are the whites in our offspring. And they have moved throughout the body, just like cancerous cells metastasizing and moving throughout someone's body, eating up everything in their path when they could. So when we talk about liberation, first and foremost, we identify the enemy, the whites in our offspring, without exception. There's no exception to that reality. It's not like, well, some of them are okay, some of them are not. When you deal with ancestral religious practice, dealing with reality, you attune to the spirit of the individual. The whites in our offspring incarnate as spirits of disorder. So there's no exception to that reality. So when you're properly grounded, you don't make foolish mistakes and seek to embrace cancerous cells. Your immune system cells don't say, well, some of these cancerous cells can be cool, so we're going to embrace some of them because I like them, and we're just going to work together to tackle the other ones. They're going to isolate, destroy, and expel the cancerous cells without exception. When you're grounded in real cosmology and real culture, you have that proper understanding. When we embrace the fake religions of the whites in our offspring with the fictional cartoon characters, Jesus, Yeshua, Isa, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Buddha, Brahman, all of these fictional cartoon characters who never existed, then we have these excuses to embrace not only the fictional characters and the foolish philosophy promoted by these fictional characters, but our enemies as well. And this is why they force these fake religions on our people. And we have our book, Cuckoo Tum, where we prove that Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, David, Aaron, Moses, Solomon, Buddha, Brahman, Muhammad, Allah, Yahweh, all these characters are fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any form or of any race whatsoever. Esoteric as well as exoteric. So now we talk about AMANNE, that's a tree term, things, adye, of the Oman. This is why we use the term AMANNE or AMANNE, the things of the nation. This is the term that we utilize for nationism. Now in ancient Kemet, the term mine or men means nature, kind, or manner. It means something which is firm, abiding, stand, position, stability, regularly, consecutively. And then of course amen means to establish, to fortify. Mennu or mine, as it's pronounced in Coptic, monument, monuments, temples, commemorative buildings, and so forth. Manu, a monument, a pillar. So we already saw that mine or minu means a town or a city. Mine or minu also means a monument. And amen or amen means to establish, to fortify. So nature, kind, or manner, permanent, abiding, staying power, regular consecutive monument. When we talk about a nation, and this deals with our cosmology, which is a proper view of what we're talking about, and Oman, a collective of individuals, a nation, is also a living, breathing entity. That's the difference between the whites and offspring talking about a nation, or even some Black people talking about nationalism, or what we need to do, but not understanding what an Oman or a nation actually is. It's a living, breathing entity with a spirit governing all who are a component part. The nature or customs of the Oman, the nation, are abiding and have staying power because they are rooted in the unchangeable and unalterable divine order of creation. They are thus monumental. When we embrace who we are individually as selves with unique functions to execute within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, while functioning interdependently with one another, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people selves only, we then adhere to the collective spirit of the Oman, the nation that governs us. This is AMANNE, which we define as nationism. Nationism, which is properly expressed as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, or African Black nationism, is rooted in reality. It answers the questions of why Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Africans possessing every skill set necessary to build, sustain, and defend an independent nation on our own territory have not coordinated those skills and affected the desired result. Nationism breaks the impotence of secular, amorphous, and messianic nationalisms. Nationism is born of our divine function as Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Africans in creation and the unfolding of creation through our spiritual, familial, social, economic, and political life expressions. This is why nationism is the purification of a nationalist. So if you have your organ is like a nation, it's a number of individuals who make up that nation. That organ governs all of the cells within that collective. When they live in harmony with the spiritual force and body of that organ, then they're operating harmoniously together. They recognize they're part of a living, breathing entity, so they must align with that. We know that as an Oman, as a collective, as a nation, as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, it's a living, breathing entity, spiritual forces that govern that entity. We must align with those spiritual forces. That's purification, it's purificatory. Then we can make the proper decisions. Then we can separate out who's who, what their spiritual function in the world is, what their contribution to the nation building effort is. Now, we said mine means a town or city, mine or minu, a town or city, minu also a monument or pillar, but you also have mine meaning to twist, to turn around, curve, bow-shaped, and so forth. That's in the language of ancient Kemet. Then in the Akan Asante Fanti dictionary, once again, Oman means a town or collection of houses larger than a village, a nation and so forth. The inhabitants of a town, a political body, a community. Of course, as we said, Oman, the nation and so forth. But then mine also means to turn or go aside, to turn in somewhere. We just said mine means a town or a city. Mine means to twist, to turn around in ancient Kemet. In Akan, mine means a town, a collective. Mine also means to turn, to go aside, to turn in. So again, the same word with two different definitions in ancient Khanate Kemet, the same word with two definitions in the Akan language because we're directly descended. But what does that mean cosmologically, and why does it have to do with nation building? So we're going to go to one of our documents that we put forward. At our Haki Merid retreat, which we have on Edisto Island in February, a yearly training, culture, and ritual retreat that we have on Edisto Island, one of the Gullah Islands, one of those islands, Edisto, where we established independent sovereign communities during enslavement, where we freed ourselves and so forth. Is one of the reasons we were drawn to go to Edisto Island every year in February for that ritual and cultural rejuvenation and so forth. It's called Hapi and Merit. We're dealing with the divinities, the male divinity of the river of ancient Kemet. It's Hapi. The female divinity is Merit. So they'll call the river the Nile, which comes from Nayar in ancient Kemet. So once again, these are things like, for example, when people learn something about African culture, or ancestral culture and so forth, and they'll say, oh, well, Egypt isn't the real name, Kemet is the real name, or Tamiri is the real name and so forth. The Nile isn't the name of the river, it's actually the Hapi River and so forth. But when people do some actual further research, they'll find that Nile comes from the language of ancient Khanate Kemet, from Nayar. Nayar means river, and Nayar became corrupted into Nayal or Nile by the whites in our spring. But Nayar is the river, and the spirit that animates the river, that possesses the river, just like spirit possession. Someone could get possessed, their ritual song, ritual dance, drumming, someone is dancing, and then the spirit comes down and possesses them. Spirit gets inside of the body. The spirit that possesses the Nayar, the river, the male divinity is Hapi. That's why it's called the Hapi River, because he possesses the river. He possesses the Nayar. The female divinity that possesses the inundation of the river is Merit. This is Merit. So if people are talking about Hapi, the male divinity of the river, and they're not talking about Merit, then they really don't have an understanding of what they're talking about. But it goes even further, because Hapi and Merit are twin divinities. You'll see Hapi or Merit of the south and Merit of the north standing side by side. Female divinities, twin female divinities. You will also find Hapi of the north and Hapi of the south, twin male divinities. So when you talk about Hapi, if they're not talking about his dual aspect, because there are two Hapis, there's Hapi of the south and Hapi of the north, they're twin deities, then they don't understand who Hapi is. If they're not talking about Merit of the south, which is her, and then her sister standing next to her, Merit of the north, Merit Shema and Merit Met, Merit of the south and Merit of the north, then they don't understand what's really going on. And some people have been talking about Hapi and Kemet for 20 or 30 years, and you've never heard them talk about the two Hapis, and you've never heard them talk about Merit of the north and Merit of the south, and what their roles are. But they have roles in our bodies, not just on earth, not just the river, river on earth. There's also the river of stars in the sky, the Hap, or the great Hap, which is the so-called Milky Way. But the river of blood in our bodies is also governed by Hapi and Merit. Hapi governs the arteries, and Merit governs the veins. The arteries send the blood out and distribute it throughout the body. The veins capture the deoxygenated blood and bring it back, up on the other contractive side of the circulatory system back to the heart. So the blood can be reoxygenated, purified, and then sent back out through the left side of the heart to be sent out to the various organs and glands and so forth once again. So Hapi and Merit are the arteries and the veins. You have the Hapi and Merit who are below the heart, the arteries and veins that are below the heart region. You have Hapi and Merit, the arteries and veins above, the heart region. For example, the superior vena, the inferior vena, and so forth, the arteries above and the arteries below. You have Hapi and Merit of the north. You have Hapi and Merit of the south. They govern the heavenly region, which is the head, and the earthly region, which is the body, and so forth. You have the twin divinities above the heart and below the heart. Just like on earth, you have Hapi of the north, Merit of the north, Hapi of the south, Merit of the south. They have shrines within our bodies. These spirits possess us. They have their names in the various traditions in Afuraka, Afuraitkai, in the Yoruba tradition, Akan tradition, Ebe tradition. Everybody knows who Hapi and Merit are, and they have their own names as Orisha, as Vodou, as abosom and so forth in these various traditions. But here's the important piece. When the blood is moving through the arteries and so forth, and then it turns off the major artery into a collective, what you have here is this proper definition of mind. A nation, as we said, like a gland, is a collective of individuals working together to support a specific divine function. What function? The function that governs that particular organ. If you have the kidneys, as you see here, which is the organ, they regulate fluid balance and mineral balance in the body. The collective of cells that make up, comprise the kidney and so forth, they know what their function is. Instinctively, they execute their function to support the greater function of the organ, which is their parent. When they serve their parent organ, they're serving the great supreme being at the same time. If they decide not to serve their parent organ, they become cancerous and they cause problems within the great body, and the immune system destroys them, lymphatic system destroys them. But when the blood's moving through the arteries and turns off into a collective, into a group of cells, we said mind is a collective of a group of cells or people, a nation, but mind also means to turn, to go aside, to turn in. In ancient Kemet, mind or Mainu, a town or a city, a collective of individuals. Mind, to twist, to turn around. When you're going down a major artery and you turn off into an area where there's a collection of people, that's the nation. So the major artery is going, then you turn off, you turn, mind, and now you're inside of a collective, mind. That's the cosmological foundation of mind being a nation. Mind meaning to turn off, and so forth. So, hold on a second. Okay, so I just wanted to.
Wait, it's Quincy.
What's up?
There was a question by Jojo in the chat. I'm about to repaste it for you. So I just repasted it.
Okay. Okay, so there's a question in the chat room that says, are we forced to live out our functions and purposes? Is it possible to have your Okra, which is the divinity in the head region, the Ka at the soul? Is it possible to have it flee when you fail to fully live out your function? Or do you reincarnate until you fulfill your Nkrabia, She, and Shepi? So what the question is dealing with, when we talk about our divine function, just like you have a physical body, and just to show the example of this, just so you understand what the question is about. Okay, so this is our book, the Okra Complex, the Soul of Akanfo. And what we deal with here is the nature of the soul. This, by the way, is Amen, the great God, Amennet, the great mother. So they work together as the supreme being. There was never a time there was just a great father or just a great mother. Amen and Amennet have worked together as a supreme being from the beginning. So I just want to pull up this image real quick. So we utilize this image of the brain as a representative. It is a shrine for the soul, the divine consciousness. The term ka with the two raised arms and so forth, that's the term for soul. Kayat is the feminine term. In Akan is okra or okra. In Yoruba it's the ori. Ori inu, the inner head, the inner spiritual head. We have a divinity in the head region, the spiritual force. That is the soul. It is a deity that is assigned by the Supreme Being to dwell with us throughout the course of our lives, to direct us with regard to our function in creation. Just like your physical body has a smaller body in the head region that has the blueprint for everything that should happen properly in the body, that is the brain. It is the control center. It is an organ in and of itself. It's an entity in and of itself. And wired within that entity is how you are to operate in the world. Every cell in your body. In your spirit body, like when someone transitions, their spirit leaves the body, they're an ancestral spirit. You can see the spirit of your grandmother, the spirit of your grandfather, and so forth, standing in the room. That's their spirit body. In the head region of their spirit body is a radiant force. That is the soul, the ka, the kayat, the okra, okrawa, the divinity in the head region. That spiritual force, wired within that spiritual force, is the function that that entity, that spirit, is to execute in the world. It is a divinity that guides the individual, that we communicate with that force in the head region. It's a male deity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female. So we wash our heads to purify our heads so we can have better communication with that divinity. He or she will show himself or herself to you so you can see that divinity sometimes. Sometimes it's just a strong pull in the head region towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with order, and the disinclination from things that will place you out of harmony with order and so forth. So when you wired within your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, is the blueprint of what you're to execute in the world. Are you an immune system cell? If you are, that's wired into your spiritual head, just like it's wired in your brain. And then you have a natural inclination in your spiritual head to move towards activities that fulfill that role. You're naturally inclined towards metallurgy. You're naturally inclined towards, surgery or engineering or policing functions or military functions. You're naturally inclined towards that energy complex because you were born with it. If you seek to operate outside of what you're naturally inclined to do, that you're naturally wired to do, you create disorder in your life. If you're wired to execute a specific function and you decide to, drink alcohol and do drugs and be self-destructive and everything else, the spirit in your head is pulling you over here, you're going in this direction. You have a strong pull in your head to make these decisions, you're going and making these other decisions, creating disorder. It's like you have a natural inclination to put water in your system or natural foods and plant life, mineral life, and so forth, and you're putting, vodka and everything else and destroying your body and creating disorder and disease and hypertension and diabetes and everything else, because you're disobeying what you were wired to do and you're doing something else. If you go against the pull of the kra, the divinity will not force you to make the right decision. If you consistently reject the divinity in the head region, it will separate from you and return to Inyamewa and Inyame. Then you're a spirit without a soul, without a kra. And that's a very grave situation because you're just a self-destructive, disordered spirit at that point. Sometimes what we do is we make decisions where we go against, what we should be doing. The divinity in the head region is pulling us this way to engage in certain kinds of activities that are furthering of our own development, furthering of our clan, furthering of our own mind, the nation, and we're doing something else, and we're deliberately going against that on a consistent basis, then there's a disalignment. The kra can separate from the head. Just like a spirit getting outside of the head is in the same vicinity, but there's a disalignment. Like somebody pulling your brain outside of your head and it's hanging out of your head and so forth. Now you're operating in a self-destructive, disaligned, erratic fashion spiritually and emotionally and mentally. If you don't realign and draw that spirit back to the head, you're just engaged in self-destructive activity consistently and you'll die in that state. And those spirits individuals who die, their spirit separates from the body and they were living out of harmony with order, they have a troubled existence in the spirit realm. And then they can reincarnate in a negative situation in a branch of the family that's also just as self-destructive as they were. Then they grew up in a self-destructive household and so forth because they were drawn energetically to that low-level vibrational frequency of a group of individuals, and through a womb and through the male and so forth who contribute to the sperm cell and so forth, to the ones who are operating on that frequency, and they're drawn into that kind of low vibrational frequency kind of environment, and they grow up in that. Now they have a capacity to overcome that, but that's very often what happens. So the deities will not force you to execute your function. They give you that natural draw, that natural inclination. If you do not, yes, the cra can separate from the head. If it's very, egregious, it can totally separate permanent. Most of us don't have that permanent separation. If we're self-destructive all the time, the cra disaligns, but we're just, suffering on a regular basis, economically, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, and so forth, until we seek out some spiritual realignment. And of course, our culture takes care of it. But yes, people will reincarnate still out of harmony with order, still having that self-destructive experience until they take the reins of control of their own development and move in a different direction. But let me know if that answers the question. Okay, so we want to let me switch back to the so when we use the term AMANNE, ne, as you see, it's comprised of Oman and Ade, and Omanade or Omanie, and you'll see it's pronounced Amanie and so forth in regular conversation speed. It says a public tax custom, but also a custom, fashion, habit, manner, ways, or usages of a people. The things, adie, of the people, the nation. The manner or ways or customs, operations, adie, of the Oman. Omanie is the way or the manner in which we operate as an Oman. This is why we call it nationism. Aman, nation, adie, things or ways or usages, quote unquote, ism. So in English, that would be nationism. As opposed to nationalism, we're talking about nationism. A nation being a living, breathing entity governed by a specific divinity, and we as cells within that great organ and so forth, we align our functions with the collective and the spiritual force that governs our collective. Nation building rooted in our ancestral religious values. So as we saw earlier, in the Akan example with the Akradin boson, every single Akan person is born on either, Awusida, Joda, Benada, Wukuda, Yauda, Fida, Minada, and so forth, one of the days of the week. They're governed by one of these divinities, which governs one of the 11 major body systems, but also their functions in creation. So just by virtue of the fact that you are born on a certain day, that indicates to the community what divinity you were aligned with before you came into the world. That's why you're born on a certain day. You're not just born on a day and named after the day. You were assigned to a specific divinity, and that divinity made sure you came into the world on their day to let the community know you were assigned to this divinity and carries this divinity's energy, and this is what is your contribution to the nation. Now, when we look in our books, okay, so and the response in the chat room, they were saying, yes, I was wondering, since some people think it's just enough to claim Akan, Yoruba, ATR, meaning African traditional religion, and do some rituals, but still justify or slightly circumvent their functions and the discipline needed to execute them. So yes, it's one, you can talk about, it's one thing to have knowledge of culture, but if you're not executing and living in, expressing that, then it's meaningless. A paraplegic can be a brilliant, professor and have memorized all kinds of things all about, science and nature and everything else. They can identify everything in the room for you, but they can't get up and move because they don't have the power to move. Someone has to assist them. You can know all kinds of things, but if you don't operate or execute or utilize the power that you've been given to execute, then you're a cultural paraplegic. You know things, but you're not moving. And everything that's happening around you, you can't affect it because you're just memorizing things, but you're not putting it into practice. We have a ka at a soul, a divine consciousness, just like you have the physical brain, but we also have a ba at a spirit, a divine living force within us that we use to activate what's in the ka. Just like the fire in the blood activates what's in the brain, and then we become animate and so forth, and we can move and operate. We have to utilize our ba at the spirit to activate what is in the ka at the consciousness, the soul, and so forth. And discipline is directly related to that. That's why we have ritual to purify ourselves, to incorporate divine law, that's the expansive pole of ancestral religion, to restore divine balance, that's the contractive pole. Now, all of that cultural foundation, cosmological foundation, is tied to nation building. But we're talking about nation building rooted in our ancestral religious values. So, and we have to lay that foundation, or else we'll just be dealing with another amorphous nationalism, unformed nationalism, a rudderless Pan-Africanism. I don't know where I come from in Africa, so I just claim it all. That's directly, actually, Eurocentric. If you communicate with your ancestresses and ancestors, communicating with your great-great-grandmothers, great-great-grandfathers going back hundreds of years, thousands of years, they can tell you exactly what clan you come from. So to say, I don't know, or believe that you don't have the capacity to find out, that's embracing the whites and their offspring. They wanted us to not know who we are so we can just identify with being an American or some other nonsense. They didn't want us to understand that we can communicate directly with our ancestresses and ancestors through spirit possession, through spirit communication, through dreams, through divination, and so forth. But spirit possession, they will communicate directly with you and show you exactly what nation you are incarnate of. So we know exactly who we are, what our function in the world is, how we are to operate, and even moving into the Western Hemisphere, as we said, and dealing with this region of the Earth Mother's body and the unique plant life, animal life, and mineral life, and our blended ancestral blood circles, our unique expression of ancestral culture. As our Kan people in the Western Hemisphere, as Yoruba people in the Western Hemisphere, as Ewe people in the Western Hemisphere, as Ovambo people, Fang people, Basa people, and so forth. Now, we talked about these different principal values. Well, this cosmological foundation informs the principal values of nation building restoration. The term Amansesiu in Akan is nation building restoration. 7 principal values of nation building restoration. And we're gonna end it with this because I know it's, we didn't want to go too long, but we have 7 principal values of nation building restoration, Amansesiu, which informs our AMANNE or nationist approach to all issues. These 7 principal values of Amansesiu nation building restoration are governed by the divinities that govern the 7-day week. That's why it's 7 principal values. If you're going to have a nation and you're going to restore a nation, first and foremost, you must have methods of food production and preservation. You can't claim to be independent when you can't feed yourself and so forth. So that has to do with agriculture, that has to do with preservation of food and so forth. methods of food production and preservation. George Washington Carver, Nana Kwame Afuraitkaitnut showed us that. Rooted in ancestral religious values, as we said, communicating with the spirits and nature, as he said he would do every morning, come back into the laboratory and replicate what he learned, transforming agriculture around the world. But methods of food production and preservation. Secondly, methods of curing disease. You cannot have an independent nation and one person gets sick from a disease that's curable and then everybody dies because we couldn't cure a disease. You can't be independent and not have methods of curing disease. Root workers, root doctors in the Hoodoo tradition, Juju tradition, Voodoo tradition, Wanga tradition, and Gengai tradition, and so forth. We use plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth to heal our people of diseases the whites and offspring cannot heal, and so forth. We have an ancestral religious values-based approach to curing disease. The whites and offspring learned about that from us. So when they were not able to cure different diseases, they would go to the people who were enslaved and find out how to cure a disease because they knew we had that medicinal knowledge and so forth. When they talk about alternative medicine and homeopathic remedies and so forth, and the whole alternative medicine movement that's taking over the United States, and more people are looking into alternative medicine than conventional medicine and so forth, that quote unquote alternative medicine movement didn't start 100 years ago with white people and naturalists and homeopaths and so forth. It came from the root workers, root doctors, and so forth that the whites and offspring copied from. So you must be able to cure disease. Third, establishment of a military structure. You cannot build a nation, get some land, build businesses and homes and so forth, and assume that the whites and offspring will not seek to come and destroy it. They are parasitical entities. They are inclined to destroy order because they are spirits of disorder. There's no exception to that reality. They were that way 20,000 or 12,000 years ago. They are that way today. They will continue to manifest that behavior until we make them extinct. So, establishment of a military structure. That is that third principal value of nation building restoration. That's the development of metal armaments for waging war. It's also dealing with chemical and biological warfare. Root work, conjure, establish the precedent for chemical and biological warfare in North America. So we poison the food and liquids and so forth of the whites and offspring, the so-called slave master, they die. We burn down the plantation, free ourselves. We poison the whites and offspring in different ways. The water supply, when Okumfo Kwabena, so-called Denmark VC, when they were planning the revolt in South Carolina and so forth, it came out in court documents later that they had planned to poison the water supply and so forth, kill everybody in the town. So we've always used chemical and biological warfare. We've talked about that for a number of years in our broadcasts and our books and so forth as a major weapon against the whites and offspring. Many people were like, well, that's probably not, effective. Chemical and biological warfare dealing with, even biological warfare, viruses, viral agents, and so forth. Our people work in labs, our people work in hospitals and so forth. We also have root workers in every level of society. We have the capacity to work that kind of power. Well, some people say, well, it's probably not effective until this year, because one hybrid strain of a virus, of a regular human coronavirus. The coronavirus has been around for a long time, but that one hybrid strain, one engineered hybrid strain of a coronavirus shut down the entire world for months. We have the capacity to engage in that same kind of chemical and biological warfare. One strain, one hybrid engineered strain, through the capacity of root work, can shut down millions. So we've always talked about that. Now people can see it in real life because they just experienced it. But we've been talking about that and we've been doing that. We waged war against the whites and offspring through chemical and biological warfare in the past, during enslavement to free ourselves. we've continued to wage war. Every time people die of natural causes in a hospital and so forth, it's not always quote unquote natural causes. Every time we see police, so-called police officers murdering our people, if you're looking at people to pay attention, there are root workers, hoodoo men, hoodoo women, juju men, juju women, voodoo men, voodoo women, who are nurses. They work in hospitals, they work in maternity wards, they work in seniors' homes and so forth. So if you were to correlate every time someone gets murdered by the police and the rise in deaths in these hospitals where Black nurses and doctors and attendants and even janitors and people who work in the entertainment industry, the hospitality industry, making food, you know, working at restaurants and so forth, if you just see the rise in people dying from certain illnesses, the root workers have been putting in work all along. There was just a story out of New York where 3 police officers had to be rushed to the hospital because they went into a steak and shake, and they got a shake, started drinking it, and noticed it smelled kind of funny, and it turned out that someone had put bleach in the shake. Every time the whites in Alice Springs go into a restaurant where there's a Black employee, they should fear for their lives. They don't know if that's a hoodoo man or hoodoo woman. They don't know if one of those people working in the restaurant practices hoodoo or juju, because we're not announcing it. Most of us are not announcing it. We just go to work. They don't know if that janitor, or if that person working in the lab, if that person working at the senior's home, that person working at the daycare, or working in the hospital, they don't know if they're a hoodoo man or hoodoo woman. We have the capacity to engage in chemical and biological warfare. That is part of our religion. It is a religious conviction to wage chemical and biological warfare to eradicate our enemies. That's part of our religion. So that's part of establishing a military structure. It is metal armaments as well. Innovative metal armaments. People talked about all these different, you know, attacks and rioters and the whites in Alice Springs trying to ally with Black people, which they're really not, instigating, you know, riots and so forth. But there are innovative ways. People use drones to deliver packages. People can use drones to deliver explosive devices. It's not always about grabbing a device and throwing it. People can use drones to do that. There are many different ways, innovatively, to wage warfare. So that's part of that process. We understood with Tulsa, Oklahoma, with Black Wall Street, what happens when you don't establish a military structure alongside all of the other businesses that you establish. You can have insurance companies, you can have banks, you can have movie houses, you can have schools, you can have dental offices, you can have doctor's offices, you can have architectural firms, you can have everything, but if you don't have a military structure, including a component dealing with chemical and biological warfare, then the whites in Alice Springs will seek to destroy anything you build. When they know you have the capacity to eliminate them and they feel it, then they have to back off. When our brother Okunfo Maaka went to Dallas and massacred 5 cops a few years ago in July, that shut down all of that white cop killing Black people. He massacred 5 cops in one night. 10 days later, Okunfo Osar Setepenra went to Baton Rouge and killed 3 more cops. They killed 8 cops in the course of a week and a half. They did more for the liberation of our people in a week and a half than these organizations have been doing in 100 years. Because when they massacred 8 cops, they took 8 individuals off the field. The whites in Alice Springs are not used to seeing themselves bleed at our hands. They're not used to seeing their people die and having to bury their people. Every time one of them murders one of our people, we need to execute them. No marches, no legislative, quote unquote solutions. When they murder us, we eradicate them, period. Directly with metal armaments as well as chemical and biological warfare. So we have that capacity and we utilize that capacity. The 4th principal value, the institutionalization of values, establishing training, educational, industrial, cultural, and religious institutions, train our people in architecture, train our people in medicine, train our people in engineering, train our people in ritual and so forth. Every institution, we need to institutionalize our values by building institutions. The fifth principal value of nation building, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence rooted on our models of governance and jurisprudence, not imitating the whites in Arab Spring and their constitutional and Congress and so forth, but we have our own ancestral models based on our clan structure, communal structure and so forth, the king and queen mother, the council of elders and eldresses, the matriclan heads, the patriclan heads and so forth coming together to form those, councils and so forth. We have representative government in our culture. We need to reestablish that. The building of homes on acquired land, on our own territory, and the manufacturing of clothing, textiles, and so forth. So these 7 principal values of nation building are aligned with the 7 days of the week and the divinities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern those 7-day week. We have individuals within ODWIRAMAN that are working in every one of these 7 areas of nation building. We have individuals who deal with the curing of disease from a natural standpoint. We have individuals who are engaged in agriculture and so forth, bioorganic farming and everything. People have established institutions. People are restructuring governmental systems and jurisprudence systems and so forth. People acquiring land here in North America as well as on the continent. That is already happening right now. People manufacturing clothing and so forth, developing different forms of that military structure we're talking about. So we have individuals who are working in these various 7 areas. And of course, as we said before, the divinity that governs your head directs you naturally towards the specific areas within that set of 7 principal values of nation building restoration that you're naturally inclined towards. If you're naturally inclined towards curing disease, you're working in that realm of that area of nation building restoration activity, animated by the divinity that governs your head. If you're the one dealing with the divinity of agriculture and so forth, and fertility of the land, you're naturally inclined towards agriculture, you're engaged in that process. If you're naturally engaged, inclined towards the military functions and so forth, because you're governed by that divinity, every principal value of nation building restoration has its corollary within the population. You have a place to fit in, to participate in this nation building process. So, okay, so we didn't want to make this a super long presentation. We just wanted to introduce people who are unaware of what ODWIRAMAN is, the Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere, the Purified Nation and so forth. We have our conference every year, and as we said before, we typically have a conference at a venue. We have vendors throughout the day. We have several presentations where individuals are sharing with the community, with ODWIRAMAN, with the Purified Nation, what aspect of nation building, restoration that they are contributing to and what work they have done. You can look at some of the videos and audio of previous conferences to see, what people are doing, what people are working in. You can download the ODWIRAMAN journals, 1, 2, and 3, and see some of those, that information as well. But of course, we meet outside of the conference. We're working throughout the course of the year, constantly building, establishing institutions, furthering the culture and so forth. And then in June, around the summer solstice, we meet to, update the community on what has been built, what we're working towards, for this nation building restoration effort. So we just wanted to introduce those who are unfamiliar with what we're doing to that information. And we also wanted to, of course, since we couldn't have the regular event, just to have this online event to introduce some people to the information. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end it here. We will save this presentation and we'll post it on YouTube. So if you want to check it out once again, if you would like to check out you can check out our website. We'll post this information up. So this is our One of our pages, the Aakhuamuman page, our institution page. We just completed 19 different online courses. Some of them are 16 of them are 6-week online courses. 3 of them are 4-week courses, but dealing with information we talked about today, plus vast array of, different aspects, disciplines, and so forth. These are the 19 different courses. You'll see the flyers for each one. That's part of our institution building effort, the online branch of our institution. We also have, for free, you could download our free, all 31 of our books on our publications page. So you see this image with most of those books there, but when you go to our publications page, you will see all of our books laid out, and you can download all of our books for free. You can also go to we completed and we put out our film over 1.5 years ago, Amaruka Adibisa, African American Ancestral Divination, dealing with the voodoo, juju, ngengai, wanga, and hoodoo traditions in North America. You can check that film out as well. The links are there on the webpage. And also, let me see, one more. Okay, and when you look at one of the texts is Marenechi, Divine Law, Love, and Divine Hate. In that book, we talk about revolution and resolution as 2 halves, the expansive and contractive poles of wisdom. So revolution is the expansive pole, resolution is the contractive pole, revolution and resolution, 2 halves of that pole. We talk about revolutionary and resolutionary nationism. When you deal with revolution, that's revolting against something, of course. When you deal with a resolution, that's resolving the issue and so forth. That is expansion and contraction. So to deal with, and just to give you the page number where we start that on. It's page 26. So if you go to that book, page 26, we're dealing with Inyansa and the revolutionary and resolutionary nature of, intelligence. So when we talk about Inyansa in the Alkan tradition, wisdom and intelligence, the expansive pole being revolution, the contractive pole being resolution. To revolt is to return when the earth moves around the Aten, the sun, and returns back to its point of origin, is made a complete revolution. So to make a complete revolution, you must return to your point of origin. And then when earth distributes energy throughout the seasons in a unified and harmonious fashion, it is completed a resolution. To resolve is to unravel, to resolve an issue, to unravel or untie these blockages and so forth, so you can get to a result that's harmonious. So we revolt so that we can revolve. We engage in revolution so we can engage a resolution. We talk about the male and female divinities, Tahuti and Seshat. And just to show an image of them. I want to give you a good one of our books dealing with Tahuti as San Kofa and so forth. We just want people to see. So you have Tahuti and Seshat. Oh, the male, they're both the divine scribes and so forth, but they're the male and female forces of divine wisdom. The expansive pole of divine wisdom, Tahuti. The contractive pole of divine wisdom is Seshat, but that wisdom has to do with revolution and resolution. Through revolution, we return to our origin, to our function in creation, that pact that we made with the Supreme Being about what function we are to execute in creation. That's returning or revolving and so forth, revolution. Once we gain that information, we take the information we gain through revolution and apply it through resolution. Apply it to the situation to bring balance or restore balance to our condition. That is revolution and resolution, directly tied to the forces of divine wisdom, Tahuti and Seshat. And for those who are unaware, when you go back to when you look at Tahuti holding the ropes, tying the enemy up so that Heru can spear them to death, Tahuti, or wisdom, supports the execution of divine wisdom, which means revolution and resolution. He supports the destruction of disorder for the purpose of maintaining divine order. So there's no such thing as wisdom or divine wisdom means someone who's simply calm and turns the other cheek and so forth. That's not wisdom. So for example, when you look at the term tech, which is a title of the Tahuti and so forth, you find that the term tech means directly corrected to the revolutionary notion of sign, meaning to return, revolt, to challenge. The term tech means massacre, slaughter, to overthrow. That is the title of Tahuti. He uses his beak to destroy and kill noxious serpents and so forth, protecting and defending. Wisdom protects you or defends you from making decisions that are self-destructive, keeps you from being consumed by predators if you're the prey, like a bird or a rabbit and so forth, using their wisdom for protection to get away from the enemy, or utilizing your wisdom on the best way to attack the enemy so you can kill the enemy. How do you get to the jugular? How does the hawk or the falcon get to the point where they can kill their prey and disarm their prey? How does the lion or the lioness, the jata berry, take down that huge, buffalo and so forth without being killed in the process, of gored with the great horns and so forth in the process? They have to use wisdom and discernment and so forth. So wisdom has always supported the destruction of the enemy. In fact, wisdom, the expansive and contracted poles, are revolution and resolution. So we go into detail about that in the book. We wanted to touch on that as well. So all right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end it here. It's 2:13, so we're going to go ahead and let you go. We'll post a notification once this, this broadcast is up on YouTube, so you can check it out. But if you want details, download the books for free. Go to the institution site, and then we'll be updating people throughout the course of every day, every week, every month, about the various nation-building restoration activities that we are engaged in, and so forth. So once again, Yedase for everyone who's tuned in, supporting the work, and Yebeshavio. We will meet again. That's all.